I used to work the night shift at a small movie theater in suburban Portland. It wasn't anything special, one of hundreds of old, second-run theaters that only showed movies that had been out for a few months. But I loved it. I loved the smell of burning butter, the hum of the projector, the late-night screenings with only a few people in the theater. There was something special about standing up high, watching the light shoot out of the lens, projecting onto another world. While I stayed here, in the dark, I worked there for over a year, my usual shift being 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. The last shift of the day was always the slowest, showing only a few late-night customers, sometimes just one person. Most of them came out of habit, or simply to avoid the city lights. Our theater had 6 projection rooms, all old equipment, except for 2 that still worked. I was in charge of room 3. That night, I remember it clearly, was Friday, December 14, 2018. Outside, it was a light rain. Oregon rain, damp and cold, never quite letting up. When I arrived, only Hank, the old manager, was closing the register at the ticket counter. He looked up and said, 11 o'clock show. Only one person. The fog, you've shown it, right? I nodded and signed the book. He continued, his voice tinged with fatigue. Don't forget to turn off the air conditioning system. You forgot yesterday. The maintenance people were complaining. I smiled and stepped into the hallway. The yellow light reflected dimly on the old tile floor. The sound of rain pattered evenly on the tin roof, mixed with the background noise of the vending machine. In room 3, the only person for the show was buying popcorn. I only saw it in the mirror. A man in his 40s, wearing a gray jacket, a baseball cap, carrying a small bag. He didn't say anything when he got the ticket, just nodded to Hank and went straight into the room. The movie started at 11 o'clock sharp. I checked the projector, the sound of gears clicking, the sound of xenon lights turning on, white light shining through the dusty smoke. In the projection booth, there was only me and the smell of hot metal. I looked through the small window the theater had. Only that man, sitting in the middle row, in row E. He didn't move much, sitting upright, his eyes glued to the screen. About halfway through the movie, when I went down to check the air conditioning in the hallway, I heard something, a whisper, very small, like someone talking in the projection room. But the movie had no dialogue, just the wind and the background music. I stopped, listened, but the sound disappeared. I thought it must be an echo from the speakers. I went back to the projection room. When I looked through the glass, I saw that he was still there, but he didn't seem to be sitting in the same place. He moved to row D, 1 row closer. I frowned. It was normal for audiences to change seats mid-movie, but I felt something was different. Maybe it was because he moved without making a sound. I wasn't sure. By about 12:20, the movie was almost over. I started to turn off the hallway lights, getting ready to clean up. But when I looked back through the glass, I realized that the movie was no longer playing on the screen. The tape was still running. I could clearly see the wheels still turning, but on the screen was just a blurry white light. And the man was still sitting there, staring into the empty light. I quickly adjusted the lens, no problem. The image was still playing. I could see the frame of the film still reflected in the projection mirror. But in the room, looking down through the glass, the screen was still white. I thought I was seeing things. I blinked, looked back. The man was still sitting, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. I decided to go down and check. The door to the screening room was heavy, creaking when it opened. The light from the emergency lights was weak. Inside, it was colder than the hallway. There was a damp smell, the smell of wet carpet. The screen was still glowing white, but there was no image. I walked slowly, the light from my phone illuminating each row of seats. When I got to row D, I saw that seat 7 where he sat was empty. No one, no coat, no bag, no trace. I stood still for a moment, my heart pounding. I turned to the door, looked around. There was no one else in the theater. I turned on the big lights, yellow light pouring down. The whole room was empty. I checked the restroom, the hallway, the storage room, no sign of anyone leaving. I went back to the screening room, turned off the machine, put away the tape. When I closed the door, I saw on the chair where he was sitting an old, yellowed movie ticket with a faded date, December 14, 2008. 10 years ago, the movie on the ticket was The Fog. I brought the ticket up to Hank to see. He frowned. Are you kidding? This ticket is printed in the old style. The theater changed the printing system in 2010. I said, I saw it in seat D7. The movie just finished. He was silent for a moment, then said, don't scare me. Man, D7 is where the guy who died in 2008 was. I froze. Hank said in a low voice. Back then, the late shift was exactly like tonight. There was only one customer. He was watching the fog, sitting in the same seat. When the staff came in to clean up, they saw him still sitting, not moving. I thought he was sleeping, but when I got closer, he was dead. His heart stopped. No reason. No one knows for how long. I couldn't say a word. I held the ticket, feeling a chill run down my arm. I asked, and then, no one sits in that seat anymore. But sometimes, the night watchman says they still see someone sitting there watching. I forced a smile, trying to play it off as a scare. I got home around 3 a.m., but when I opened my jacket pocket to put the ticket away, I found another ticket in my pocket, brand new, printed on December 14, 2018. Same seat number, D7. I don't remember when I put it in. The next day, I asked for a shift change, but Hank called, his voice shaking. Did you lock room 3 last night? Yes. Why? The camera recorded a light on in the room at 3:14. No one came in. I quit a week later. The theater closed in 2020. I still have that ticket, pressed into my notebook. The paper is still white. The ink hasn't faded. But every year, on December 14, the number D7 printed on the ticket gets darker, as if someone had just reprinted it. Now, I don't go to the movies anymore. I can't bear it when the lights go out, and everyone looks in the same direction, waiting, because I know somewhere, in the darkness, someone is still watching with me. I didn't think I'd tell this story, because it's not that scary to most people. No blood, no chases, no screams. But if you've ever been in a place so quiet, you start to hear things you're not sure are real. You'll know how I feel. I live in Sacramento, California. There's a small movie theater on the south outskirts of town, an old school theater with only a few rooms left, showing old movies for cheap. I go there when I need to escape life, usually the late shows, when the theater is almost empty, so I can sit alone and let my mind drift. It was a rainy Thursday night in February 2019. I had just gotten off work and didn't want to go home, so I stopped by. They were showing Hitchcock's Rear Window. I like old movies. The theater was so empty that the ticket seller asked me twice if I was sure I wanted a late-night ticket. I smiled and nodded. Room 2 was small, with about 50 seats. When I walked in, the film had just begun. There were about 4 people in the theater, a couple near the middle, an older man in the front row, and I chose the row near the back. Seat E6. The lights went down, the screen lit up, and all sound seemed to fade away. I remember clearly the damp smell of the old carpet, the gentle sound of the fan, and the steady patter of rain outside. I felt at peace, the kind of peace of someone sitting in the dark, but knowing everything is in place. About half an hour later, the couple left. Holding hands, the man in the front row dozed off, his head slumped on his shoulder. I was the only one left. I liked that feeling. No laughter, no popcorn chewing, no whispering, just me and the light from the screen. But then, midway through the movie, I heard a very small noise from behind me, a soft cluck, as if someone had just touched the seat. I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard it again more clearly, this time a rustling of fabric, a few rows behind me. I turned around. The last row was dark, no one in sight. I shrugged, turned back to the screen. 5 minutes later, I felt something else, a gaze, the distinct feeling of someone watching me, not from the screen, but from behind my head. I didn't dare turn around. I tried to concentrate on the movie, on James Stewart's voice, on the familiar echoes. But then, I saw a silhouette on the screen, a faint black outline, swiping across the left corner of the frame, as if someone had just stood up in the last row. I turned back immediately. No one, just empty seats, and the dim red exit signposts on the wall. I swallowed, looked at my watch. 11:43 p.m. About half an hour left. I told myself it was okay. The theater staff must have passed by. But a few minutes later, when the screen lit up in daylight, I saw it more clearly. A figure sitting in the last row. I couldn't see the face. Only the figure, thin, sitting upright, head tilted slightly, not moving. I leaned slightly to the right to get a better look. But strangely, I couldn't see the face clearly from any angle. It was as if the light wasn't reaching me. I started to have trouble breathing. I thought to myself, maybe it's an employee. Someone checking. I turned to the door, it was still closed. No one was coming in or out. The movie reached its climax. On the screen, footsteps echoed up the stairs. And in the theater, I heard real footsteps too. Clear, slow, steady. From behind, I turned my head. No one. But the seat behind me, seat E7, was slowly lowering. As if someone had just sat down. I jumped to my feet. A small creaking sound came from the chair. I shone the light of my phone behind me. No one was there. Just an empty row of seats. And a gray coat draped over the back of the last row. I walked slowly up the steps. The light of my phone shook with my hand. The coat was soaked with rain, but it felt as cold as ice. I looked around and called out softly. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Only the steady sound of the projector. I picked up the coat, intending to take it to the counter. But when I reached the door, I heard the sound of a chair rising as if someone had stood up at the same time as me. I turned around, my heart almost stopping. The entire last row of seats were folding down at once, making a dry, simultaneous sound. I dropped the coat and ran out of the screening room. When I reached the hallway, I saw the cashier locking the computer. I said, my voice trembling, "Did anyone enter the theater just now?" She looked at me, frowning. "No. Only you." I just checked the camera. The theater was empty. I was silent, then asked again, "Did anyone forget their coat?" "What coat?" "Gray. Last row in room 2. She shook her head. "No. That room isn't open tonight. The movie is in room 4. I was stunned. I was sure I had entered room 2. The ticket in my hand clearly said, room 2. I held up the ticket for her to see. But on the ticket, the printed number was room 4. I looked back at the hallway. Room 2's door was closed. The lights were off. She whispered, as if talking to herself, "Room 2 hasn't been used since 2015. There's an electrical leak. It hasn't been fixed yet." I left the theater that night. The rain soaked my shirt. I don't remember how I got home. The next morning, I found the ticket again. The paper was dry, but the room 4 print had faded, revealing the text underneath room 2. A week later, I returned to the theater, just to make sure I hadn't lost my mind. The new manager said, "Are you sure? That room's been locked for a long time. But if you want to watch, I can open it." We went in. The air inside was cold as a freezer, and the smell was heavy. The last row of seats was covered in thick dust. I turned the light, stopping at the last seat on the left corner, seat F8. On it, there was a gray coat. I recognized it immediately. The manager saw me standing still and asked, "What's wrong with you?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the coat. And at the seat next to it, seat F7, where the dust on the seat was wiped clean, as if someone had sat there last night. I left the theater, never to return again. But sometimes, whenever I watched a movie elsewhere, when the lights went down and the projector started, I would still glance at the last row of seats, just to make sure that this time, I was really alone. I started managing a small theater complex in Spokane, Washington. In the winter of 2017, it was called Parkway Cinemas, and it was old but still had the original structure. 6 screens, 2 stories, a low roof, and dark red walls. It was part of a local chain that was trying to save old theaters for nostalgia. I was tasked with restructuring, meaning cutting costs and fixing up empty rooms. I loved the job. I'd worked as a projectionist, and I knew every sound the machine made, every scratch on the screen. When I first got the job, I found Parkway charming, flashing neon lights, the smell of burnt butter, damp carpet, and faded billboards. There was just one oddity: screen number 4. On the floor plan, screen 4 was between screens 3 and 5, but out in the hallway, its door was locked, repainted, and unmarked. I asked the old staff. Everyone just shrugged. That room is no longer used. Why? No one knows. It was sealed before I started working. One evening, I looked up the maintenance records. Room 4 had been temporarily out of use since June 1997. The reason was briefly stated: test screening incident, not restored. No one wrote down any more details. I didn't believe in the ghost theater rumors. I just thought there was some hidden technical problem, or an unsolved insurance accident. I decided to check. That night, after the theater closed, I took a flashlight and spare key and walked down the hallway downstairs. When I got to the door of room 4, I could clearly hear the air conditioner from the room next door. The sound of running water pipes. The door was painted gray. The handle was rusty. I inserted the key. The lock was hard, but it opened. The air inside was cold, heavy with the smell of dust and iron. I shone a light around. The seats were covered with old tarps. The screen was torn in one corner. The ceiling was peeling paint. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. But in the middle of the room, there was still a projector. An old model. A Christie. Still plugged in. The power indicator light was dim, blinking orange. I pulled the cord out of the socket, but the light was still on. I paused. This old machine didn't have a spare battery. I walked closer, shined a light. The film reel was still installed on the back of the body. Hand-labeled. Test reel, June 14, 1997. I wasn't going to turn it on, but something intrigued me. I checked the socket. The system was working. No short circuit. I turned the power button. The projector turned on. The screen in front of me was bright white. The spinning wheel made a smooth, steady sound. I sat down in a chair near the back, watching the image begin to appear. There was no title. It was just a scene of a room identical to the theater I was in. Same angle, same lighting. In the movie, someone was walking into the frame wearing a bright shirt, holding a flashlight, shining around. The person walked toward the projector, then turned to look at the screen. I was stunned. The person in the movie was me. Every movement, every breath, exactly the same. And when I looked back at the screen, the person in it was looking back at me. I jumped up, turned off the machine. The lights went out immediately, but the gears were still running. I unplugged it. I could still hear the spinning. I bent down to check, my heart pounding. When I looked up, I realized that the screen was now me crouched before the projector. I threw down the flashlight and ran outside. The next morning, I returned with the technician. The room was locked. Everything was the same. No plug, no film, no trace. I thought I was hallucinating. But that night, when I checked the automatic projection system, I saw something I couldn't deny. Every night, at 2:17 a.m., the system recorded an internal screening in room 4, lasting 94 minutes. The data was stored on the server and could not be edited manually. And the report was clear. Operator. None. I asked the IT department to retrieve the camera. The hallway in front of room 4 was empty. But at exactly 2:17, the showing light on the door turned on, glowing red. No one came in or out. I tried staying awake for one night, sitting in the lobby, looking through the camera. 2:17. The red light turned on. 2:18. I heard the projector running faint but distinct. No one else in the theater. I gathered my courage and walked toward room 4. When I got there, I saw a faint white light coming from the crack in the door. I put my ear to it. There was a whisper inside, like a conversation muffled through ice. I didn't open it. I stood there until the lights went out, then left. The next day, I talked to Hank, who had been the manager of this theater before me, who, strangely, was also named Hank in Story 1. When I mentioned room 4, he was silent for a long time, and then said, "You heard that? Right." I nodded. He sighed. In '97, they tried to show a student film, filmed in this theater. While the movie was running, the projector broke down and started smoking. The operator was in the room and couldn't get out in time. It wasn't a big fire, but he died of smoke inhalation. What was his name? I asked. Tevin Moore. After that, the theater locked room 4. But every night, at the same time, the projector would turn on by itself. I saw it, but I never dared to go in. I didn't trust him completely, but enough that I didn't want to go back. I applied for a transfer. 3 weeks later, I packed up and left the theater. Before I left, I stopped by the tech room to get the paperwork. When I printed out the room list, I saw that in the operational history column, the last line for room 4 read, Projectionist, K. Moore, last active, December 3, 2017 and 17 a.m. That was the night I turned it on. I never went back to Parkway Cinemas. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I opened my laptop and checked the automated projection system I used to manage remotely. And there, a showtime was still clearly displayed. Room 4, test reel 2:17 a.m. tonight. I tried deleting it. It reappeared every time. Maybe I'll change computers. Or maybe I don't need to. Because no matter what I did, at exactly 2:17, I could hear the old projector somewhere. Steady, never turning off.